Hello and welcome to the BA Brew. I'm Mike.
I'm Jo.
I'm Charlotte.
I'm Simon.
And today we're talking about inspiration, which is a subject which I know is dear to your heart, Simon. And I'd like to sort of thank you for suggesting this. Simon and Charlotte have joined us today to talk about the butterfly effect of inspiration. And we can't talk about inspiration without asking you, where did your inspiration for this idea come from, Simon?
Thanks, Mike. So when submissions came out for the BA conference this year, I was kind of thinking of ideas to kind of potentially talk on or run a workshop. And one that's almost been, I guess, almost 4 or 5 years in the making is this idea of inspiration. And for me, where that came from was I'm very lucky, very fortunate that I live in the same village as Sir Captain Tom Moore. So I'm sure we're all probably familiar with Captain Tom Moore, but for anyone that isn't, in 2020, it feels like a lifetime ago, but we were living in a kind of COVID pandemic world. And at the time, Captain Tom was 99 years old, and he wanted to raise awareness and a little bit of money for the NHS, who were doing an amazing job during these incredibly difficult times. And he had this idea: he would walk 100 laps of his garden, and he'd do it over a series of days and weeks. Bearing in mind he was 99 years of age, and he hoped to raise £1,000. And what happened was, first of all, local media, then national media, then international media became aware of this, and £1,000 became 10,000, became 100, it became a million. I think the grand total was 37 million pounds that he raised for NHS charities. And it stuck with me because I got to see that firsthand. I got to see just the impact he had on everybody during a time when we were all probably looking for a little bit of hope and inspiration. And he provided that. He provided that outlet. And what I loved was, at its heart, it's a very simple idea. He was going to walk 100 laps of his garden. But what made it special was a combination of things. It was the timing, the world we lived in. It was the person, 99 years old, a World War veteran, with this incredibly positive attitude. He used to say, tomorrow will be a better day. And that stuck with me, just the simplicity of it, but also the magic that it had in lifting, a nation, really. And it stuck with me because I've since been a big believer in this idea of what I like to call everyday amazing. And by that I mean is everyday people are amazing. I generally believe that we can all be an inspiration to other people through our words and our actions. Maybe not on the scale of Captain Tom, but that's okay. Sometimes it can be small, sometimes it can be big, and sometimes it can be in between. So it's a kind of long way of saying that seeing that experience firsthand sort of 4 or 5 years ago has stuck with me. And even now, sometimes I think, what would Captain Tom do when I'm faced with a particular dilemma or I'm feeling sorry for myself? And that was the basis. That was the kind of core concept or idea behind what is now going to be a workshop at the BA conference in September. Really, this idea of what is inspiration, where does it come from, and how we each have it within us to inspire other people through our actions and through our words, and sort of almost pay it forward. Really, so. Yeah, that's where that came from.
Okay, so quite a big a small activity that Sir Tom did. I guess it was 100 laps. That's quite a lot for him, but quite inspiring. It's inspired you to do this. It's probably inspired lots of other people as well. Charlotte and Jo, have you got stories of inspiration? I've named both of you, so I should pick one. Charlotte, have you got something you can share around inspirations?
I think even just speaking about how I got onto doing this with Simon, he did a few talks at work and spoke about different personal experiences, and we were just chatting in our BA community, and I mentioned that I wanted to improve my personal speaking, and seeing Simon do that really inspired me, and he said, would you like to be part of this? And just that conversation led to me being part of this, which hopefully will be really great.
I'm sure it'll be fabulous. We're talking pre the conference, and hopefully this will go out before the conference as well. But yes, I'm sure if past events are anything to go by, and past performance isn't a guarantee of future performance, they say in financial services, but we'll be fine. Right. Jo, can you think of some
Oh, I think it's just finding really inspiring role models, like Simon was saying, just finding those people that have done things before, they've shown you what's possible, and thinking, well, actually, that is something that I could do as well, and knowing kind of where to draw your energy from as well in terms of finding motivation. So having that balance between like personal life, work life, and knowing what really motivates you to get to that end goal kind of thing. But definitely role models and seeing people succeed can be a really good inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, I can think. I'm trying to think back, and there's been like a few sort of career ones where I think the first major role model in my career was when I got a job working. I was working in a chemistry lab, but there was this chap there, Charles Doyley Watkins. He was 70 and he got into IT at the age of 50, and I was working with him. Well, I was actually supposed to be working on the chemistry side of things, but I got involved in computing with him, and he really inspired me to get more into working in IT. And I don't think I'd be here today were it not for the fact that he didn't let the technology get in his way. He was determined to make it work and did some amazing things with it. So yeah, that was quite inspirational. And then I was thinking other things in terms of personal activities. I've been involved with a running club since 2015, and the person who set the running club up set it up as it was a small group that was meant to just help people get out and deal with their mental health and have a safe space to run and chat. And I joined that and loved it. When COVID came along, it just stopped. So we'd have something like 250 people would turn up on a Monday night, and then COVID hit, 0 people. And he moved out of the area, unfortunately. But when we were allowed to go out and run again, I thought, well, I can give back a little bit here. So I would take groups of 6 people out and just kept it going. And we're now up to, I think we can get about 60 to 80 people on a Monday night, and we're doing a Thursday night as well. And it just feels really good to sort of give that back. Yeah, so there's all sorts of places we can get that inspiration from. What can you think of other examples of things that you can bring into to your?
Yeah, just building on it, Mike. I know we sort of touched on it pre-recording, but I think about my sort of professional life. I won't say the name, but I remember um, I worked in a kind of a very big corporate organization. I felt like a square peg in a round hole. I was doing a job as a high performer, but I was almost sort of limiting my natural behaviors to fit that, I guess, the cultural norm. And then we had a CIO came in and who was just incredible in terms of his behaviors. Because I've been around leaders that will sometimes talk, aspirationally about what good looks like and what their vision is and what the culture is. But what set him aside probably from anybody else that I've um, ever sort of worked with was his actions, his behaviors, because he would do things you thought, if it's okay for him to do it, it's okay for me to do it. He would break down kind of silos, break down barriers, really challenge the status quo. And he created this culture where you then felt empowered to be a little bit braver, a little bit bolder in terms of how you went about stuff. And that stuck with me because that was probably about 6 years ago now. And I goes as far as to say that was incredibly transformational in terms of how I operated as a BA, because suddenly I felt like the shackles had been taken off a little bit, and I could be a little bit more freer in how I express myself in terms of tools and techniques, my approaches, challenging status quos, etc. So, and I know he had that impact not just on me, but on lots of people because it was just almost transformational in terms of how he came in. But yeah, it's that what it showed me was words can be powerful, but sometimes it's the actions of individuals that can really be a source of inspiration. Almost that leading by example, leading from the front, and that stuck with me, 6 or 7 years on.
I think to follow on from that, it's those like little gestures that at the time you don't realize how profound they are. I've got an example of that. Probably over 15 years ago, when I first started out as a BA, I was struggling. I was like the only BA in an organization of thousands. I was like on my own, very immature practice. And one of the program managers saw me kind of struggling and bought me one of Deborah Paul's BA, I think it was like second or third edition book. And it became like my Bible. And I'd say if it wasn't for that book, I probably would have gone down a different career path. But I learned all the techniques from it and started building up a practice from that. And I just thought about it the other day, because obviously I work for AssistKD now, working with Debbie, and I was just thinking that that one little gesture of that guy just buying me a book, handing it to me, not really saying anything, completely changed the course of a career which could have gone a very different way. So just that little gesture kind of led to feeling inspired to go down that BA career pathway. And I got in touch with the guy the other day. I was like, thank you so much for that little gesture, because actually I didn't really appreciate it at the time, but that's the thing that led to going down a certain path. So to come onto the ripple effect and butterfly effect, I think little tiny gestures that actually mean a lot to someone is a really good way of doing it. Just doing something to be kind really makes a difference.
Experience, actually. I swim a lot, and I remember when I was younger I struggled with my confidence and it was holding me back, and my swimming coach bought me a book on the mental side of it, like the resilience you need to have, and it made the world of difference. That small gesture just gave me what I needed to feel I could do it, because it wasn't a physical thing that was holding me back, it was mental. So yeah, it makes a big difference.
It's quite interesting how little things that people can say can make a big difference to you to actually unlock some of those opportunities to try things out. So I remember one director I had. I thought I was being a reasonable business analyst, so I was doing the right documents, I was doing the right models and things. But sometimes it didn't work, just cranking the handle. And this director, one of the things he said, and he'd say it quite often, was don't ask for permission, just come to me and beg for forgiveness. So it was basically, it was given a license to try do things and then see how they worked out. And yeah, there was one particular business case I was set up to do 4 to 6 weeks writing this business case, and when I spoke to this team, I thought there is no way this business case is going to get through approvals, because it just didn't have enough benefits. So I spoke to the team, or the manager who'd asked for this, and said, we can spend 6 weeks writing the business case and then it won't be prioritized and go anywhere, or I can work with the team and we can deliver you the solution in SharePoint within that 6 weeks and train you to maintain it and operate it yourselves, and then step away and you'll have a solution rather than a document that sits on the shelf that actually won't go anywhere and won't have any real value, but we'll have ticks and boxes. And that's what they decided to do. They decided to go for this solution, and as far as I know, it's still in operation now, which was so that inspiration from that director enables us to do something much more effective in that kind of situation. So what sort of things can people look forward to in your workshop? What are you going to be covering?
Yes, it's kind of broken down into 4 or 5, I guess, key sections. So the first is actually exploring what is inspiration, because I think that in itself, inspiration is different to everybody, and that's the beauty of it. We all take inspiration from different sources. So we're going to kind of explore what is inspiration, explore how it differs to motivation. So inspiration typically is the catalyst, it's the fire, and motivation is that kind of fuel to kind of keep it going. Then we're going to kind of explore different sources of inspiration. So broadly, they kind of fall into 4 categories. You've got social inspirations, and we've touched on some of those. That's typically people in our lives. And that could be people in our personal life, our professional life. It could be people in the public eye. So those kind of social connections or social inspirations. Then the other is sort of natural inspirations. So, for example, I'm very inspired by nature. I love being out in nature. I love being in the water, and they're a source of inspiration for me. You drop me in a lake for an hour or so, and I'll come away with a bunch of ideas and be sort of rejuvenated in terms of my energy levels, really. So nature is another source of inspiration. Then there's the arts, so music and language and painting and modeling and et cetera, et cetera. And another one that's really quite powerful and is sort of personal experiences. So we've all probably got personal experiences in our lives that sometimes we're uncomfortable with it, but we're actually really quite proud of, and they become these sort of internal sources of inspiration for us. You gave a great example there, Mike, of the running club. You should be very proud of that, and rightly so, because that's something that you've decided to do, and it's a personal experience that's then benefited other people, really. So, yes, exploring what is inspiration, exploring the different sources, And then one of my favorites is that sort of butterfly effect. So looking at how an action can have that sort of cause and effects, and how small actions sometimes can lead to kind of you know, sort of far bigger things really. And then last but not least, and the why sometimes referred to as the heart of the workshop, is we've got this great activity which is looking at the inspirations in our lives. So when I say our lives, the audience, the participants, um, because again, Charlotte and I will kind of share our own insights and our own experiences. But again, going back to this concept of everyday amazing, um, my hopes of workshop is actually the people in attendance. They will be the ones that will kind of share their own wonderful stories about how they've been inspired or how they've inspired others. Really, that will kind of continue to pay that forward. Really, so yeah, that's the hopes for the workshop.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting actually when you start bringing some of your whole self to work. Some of those stories can inspire people. So I've been a beekeeper. Well, I say I'm a beekeeper. I'm more of a honey stealer than a beekeeper. Beekeeping suggests that I'm doing lots of stuff, but I just go and steal the honey when it's ready. But I got into beekeeping from a colleague who we were driving down to a client site every couple of weeks, and it was about a 3 hour journey each way, and he was a beekeeper and he told me all about beekeeping, and I was so inspired I wanted to do it. So when I got back, I signed up for a course and got into beekeeping that way. And I'm sure, and I've talked to lots of people about beekeeping, and it there's lots of things from that you think, well, some of that's useful in work, and also the stories that you tell around it are really quite helpful.
Yeah, and sorry, just to build on that, Mike, about that whole self, I think that's really quite powerful. Um, because again, it's just a personal opinion, but I think certainly since post-pandemic, the lines have been blurred between our sort of work selves and our personal selves, and I think sometimes for the better. But just very quickly, Charlotte mentioned the conversation that we had on the back of something I did internally at work. What I was actually standing up and speaking on, which was terrifying at the time, but I was speaking to sort of 200 colleagues about, as part of Mental Health Awareness Week, about some of the challenges that I'd had over the last sort of 6 or 7 years for various reasons. Um, and the only reason I could do that was because of the people that had gone before me in terms of being brave and bold and sharing their stories and that knock on effect. And I would never have done that. Never have done that in a million years pre pandemic. But I think that sort of bringing your whole self to work, I think, can only sometimes be for the better, because I brought that to work and I was quite open about it. And I kind of shared my experiences, and I kind of signposted sort of the help and the support and the journey that I'd been on, because I know for a fact there'll be people in the audience that can resonate to where I was and need that same help and support that I got when I needed it most, really. So I think that'd be quite powerful, being your authentic self and being your whole self to work.
Yeah. And so other sources of inspiration, I mean, they come from all sorts of different places, don't they? So tell me a bit more about the butterfly effect then. What were your thoughts around that?
I think we hope that people, from sharing their stories within the workshop, will inspire other people, or they can relate to something that they didn't know that they might have done that might inspire. They actually have been inspiring people that just they didn't even know. I think often people don't realize that some of the little things that they do, that, like the things we've mentioned, like an act of kindness, or, encouraging somebody to do something that they maybe wouldn't do, that maybe is a challenge, but that those words really make a big difference.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's going to be lots of interesting discussions in your workshop. Unfortunately, not everybody's going to be able to get to your workshop, because some people might not even be at the conference, or some people might be watching this after the conference. So, what things would you recommend to people if they can't get to your workshop, about how to start this butterfly effect? Because you've got an opportunity to start the butterfly effect here.
Yeah, I think one thing that Charlotte and I have come up with in terms of idea, which we're hoping will pay off, is that we're actually going to invite participants at the conference and the workshop to come and do a short piece to camera. So to answer 3 questions around inspiration, that we're going to hopefully package up and put out as a nice kind of montage on LinkedIn. So we're going to give people that are in attendance at the conference that kind of in the moment opportunity to kind of to pay it forward and kind of share their own experiences, really. So so appreciate not everyone can get to the conference, but we'll definitely have some content that we'll be sharing afterwards that hopefully will keep the ripple effects going. But yeah, I think Charlotte kind of articulated wonderful there, which is sometimes it is small actions. And Joe, you mentioned it as well about that act of kindness that somebody did. Sometimes it's just the smallest things that can have the biggest impact. So it's just that kind of being kind, and if you're in an opportunity to kind of be a positive influence on someone or offer them help or support or guidance or encouragement or anything like that, it's just to take it for no other reason that you just may sort of help benefit that person, whether you realize it or not.
I think it's paying it forward with no expectation of anything from it as well, isn't it? It's doing something just to be nice and just to help people and see them do well as well. So it feels good all around.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is for me, that's the thing that keeps me going with the running club. That I like. I guess it was slightly selfish. I went to the running club because since COVID, most of my work has been virtual. So I sit in front of a screen for day in, day out. And going to the running club meant I could engage with people. And so I'd take people on a sort of couch to 5K journey. We didn't do a formal couch to 5K, but we got them running. And then they'll say, "Oh, you don't have to run with me this week." But no, I enjoy running with you because it's actually real engagement with real people. And you hear real stories from people, which often you don't hear that. Well, I certainly don't hear that when I'm just working remotely, unless I'm telling myself stories of it, which maybe I can get some help for that as well. But it really is quite rewarding. And one of the things that really amazed me is some of the running club nominated me for an award at our local Melton Let's Get Moving award, and I got this. I was invited to a dinner to this presentation evening, and I was up against a couple of other people, and I won this local. What was it? Let me show you. I'm really quite proud of this. So I won this Let's Get Moving Hero Award. I don't know if you can see that. And I was really touched by that because I wasn't expecting anything to come out of it. I was doing it for other reasons, just for the fun and keeping people running. And then I got that award. I was really quite touched. So sometimes these things can end up paying you back, but yeah, let's get out there. Let's get all these caterpillars turning into butterflies, and maybe spread the word around a little bit. Maybe that's not one you want to use in your workshop there. Right. So, any sort of last sort of motivational comments from any of you? Let's go around. Start with you, Joe. Anything you'd like to add?
I think just finding what energizes you to keep the motivation going. So we were talking before this call just about it's great being inspired, it's great being motivated, but how do you keep that motivation through? If you're an ideas person rather than a completer finisher, sometimes it can take a bit more energy to get to the end. So just finding that balance of like personal life, work life, and what makes you tick, and really keeping that motivation going and finding your own way of doing it, because it won't be the same as the next person who's got the same goal. So that's probably my thing I'd be looking for.
And I think Simon, Charlotte, preparing for the conference is quite a long, it's quite a big job, and it's over a number of months. So what's kept you motivated to do that?
I think remembering your why, surrounding yourself with people that inspire you and motivate you and like resonate with what you're trying to do. I think that just keeps you moving in the right direction.
Simon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad Charlotte said that, because I was struggling, if I'm honest, Mike. When you say what have you got to kind of leave everybody with, I was like, oh dear, I'm not very good at that sort of stuff. But I love what Charlotte said, because I hold that very dear. Remember your why. Like we spoke about it beforehand about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. I think any sort of undertaking that you set out on, big, small, medium, like, you typically will encounter setbacks or challenges. But if you can answer the why, like, why am I doing this? Why am I making myself feel uncomfortable recording a BA Brew? Then you kind of, that's your motivation, that's your fuel to keep doing it anyway. So yeah, thanks for that, Charlotte. I'm gonna put you back on that one. Yeah, remember your why, because it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, for me, it's remembering the why is important. What's made you think you wanted to do this in the first place? The other thing is that for me is I know that I struggle to finish some things. I get interested in so many things. I'm all over the place. I've described myself as somebody who collects hobbies, but I don't spend enough time on all of them. But sometimes there are things that they're that important to you, then maybe you need to go and find somebody else to pair up with. And if you've got somebody else, that can keep you focused as well. So I've found that can be quite helpful for some of the things where I haven't necessarily got all of the skills. I've got the motivation, haven't necessarily planned it out particularly well. Well, thank you very much for some inspiring words. I hope that it will inspire some other people to think, well, what could they do and how can they pay it forward? And thank you to everybody for joining us today for the BA Brew. If you do have any ideas for a future episode of BA Brew, then please email us via babrew@assistkd.com. And please remember to like and subscribe. Thanks a lot, and bye for now.